Hey, bummed you couldn't make it to MT, but this is still the way that you can get all the information because it's super important. So you do know that we're doing an MT today was related to why'd you sign up for AP Bio? I've asked you this before, but I wanted to really ground you in this for this MT because the reason why I invited everybody to MT or signed everybody up to MT is not a happy one. We need to talk about the case study formative, integrity, and the future of assessment. So before I even start, I want to apologize to those of you who did your best on this formative and who were honest and didn't look anything up online because some of your peers can't say that. There was some blatant use of internet keys on the case study formative, and maybe it was my fault for putting so much trust in you guys. I knew that the keys could be found. So there's some action steps that I'm giving myself to prevent this from happening in the future, but there are some things that we're going to do as a whole class to prevent this from happening. And then I just want to talk to you guys about why that's not okay. Obviously, you know why it's not okay, but I want to kind of approach it in a different way. So future of assessments, again, sorry if this isn't you and you're like, I really worked hard, so this sucks. I'm sorry, but the integrity of the test was compromised. If one person got the key, then that just means that we're not going to grade this formative. So the summative is going to be the only assessment grade for this unit that's going to count in IC, and it's going to look like this, as will all other future assessments. They're going to be open note. If you created something, I want you to be able to use it. You worked hard to create the notes. The notes are a requirement this year. If you're making good notes, I want that to help you be able to answer questions. Not open internet. Questions are going to be selected more carefully and more heavily researched prior to me using them in class or putting them on an assessment. Case studies as well, and these alternative forms of assessment. Or I'm just going to make them brand new, make them myself, so that you cannot find them online. And then assessments are going to be timed again. We did a few timed assessments in the beginning of the year, and then we kind of steered away from that. We're going to incorporate that again. All of these new things are aimed at preventing what happened on the case study formative. And this just sucks that we have to do this. I really, really did trust you guys as a whole group, and I'm not saying that I don't anymore, but I just want to make sure that you know that I believe that you can do better than this. I didn't teach so that people could get good grades. I couldn't care less if you get a 90% or 100% if you didn't earn it and you don't actually know the things that you are saying. I would rather have somebody get a 75% because they actually really know that 75%, because I taught them that, and because they used what I taught them in class in addition to stuff that they're doing on their own at home to really learn. You guys, I love teaching, and I still love it. Sometimes I have caught myself this year looking back on pictures like this. This is what AP Bio looked like last year. And I catch myself thinking about what this should look like and what it doesn't look like now because we're behind computer screens. And I'll admit that I've caught myself being maybe I don't love my job so much anymore this way. But I started reflecting more recently, and I still do. I still love teaching you guys. But at the same time, I recognize that it is different and it's harder. So taking the easy way out is just that it's easy. You're stressed out, you're overwhelmed. I know that. So there's a key online. Why not use it? Why not relieve some of that stress? I get where you're coming from there. But what are you going to do later on when you are taking the AP test in May? What are you going to do when you go to college and you take a science class in college and you've learned nothing because you relied on looking stuff up online and you didn't actually have a meaningful experience. So that's my speech. Long story short, blatant use of keys on the formative, not cool. So I'm going to do some things in the future to prevent that. And I just want to remind you guys of why that's not okay just for academic integrity, just as bad. Not good character. there, but also you're setting yourself up for failure. I couldn't care less if you end this class with an A if you actually didn't learn anything and you go on to take the AP Bio exam and you're not prepared. My job is to prepare you, and I love preparing you, and I want you to be prepared. And so that just means that if you're struggling, ask for help. Don't look up stuff online. That being said, I am going to go over the case study formative now, so that everybody feels good about it and really understands why the answers are the right answers. So here we go. Let me get my little pen thing open. So one thing I want to note first is that these two diagrams show the same exact process. So I think that this first diagram was easier to see the response. So the first question asked you guys to find the response. Also have out your case study if you don't already so that you can go over what you answered and what I'm saying together. Anyways, one of the questions in that first assignment was what is the response? You were supposed to tell in an email what the response is. The response is the very last thing that happens. So this, in my opinion, was easy to find because it's very obvious. The last thing that happens is relaxation. That is the response. So all of these things happen to cause the response. The response also happens in the smooth muscle cell. So that is important because this will help you find the ligand, because actually finding the ligand in this example is a little bit tricky. But if the response is in the smooth muscle cell, that means that this is where the ligand bound. So the ligand must have entered the smooth muscle cell. So I'm going to go and this box represents the membrane. So I'm going to go and follow and say, oh, look at this. This nitric oxide went into the smooth muscle cell to cause that response. So the nitric oxide is actually the ligand. That is the first messenger. There's some other things happening here, and that's because nitric oxide gets produced by a series of reactions that could happen here or here. So these things aren't the ligands, and this isn't part of the cellular communication pathway. These are just chemical pathways or chemical reactions that are making the nitric oxide. Because the nitric oxide enters the muscle cell, which is where the response is, it's the nitric oxide that's the first messenger. Finding the second messenger I thought was even more complicated because this might not have been something that you guys really recognized right away. The nitric oxide comes in and it doesn't turn in to GC. It activates it, but the reason why it activates it or how it activates it is the most important part. Notice here, when nitric oxide comes in and it activates CG or GC, it's bonded to it. This little dash here, the NO dash GC, means that the NO and the GC are bound. So the NO bound to the GC, meaning that the GC was the receptor. That is the process of reception right here. So the GC was not the second messenger because it was the receptor. And that also goes to the other part of that assignment where what was the receptor on the inside or outside of the cell? Was it intracellular or on the membrane? Nitric oxide came in through the membrane, represented by this box, and it bound to GC inside of the cell. It was intracellular. So that's why it was intracellular. And the second messenger then is the first thing that's activated after the reception. So NO comes in with GC and they bind reception, step one. Then I have all of this stuff happening. The first thing that happens as a result is this GTP turning in to cGMP. This is the first thing that's activated after reception. So that is the second messenger, the cGMP. Okay, so that's the first assignment. Relaxation was the response. NO was the first messenger. It bonded in the cell, so the receptor was intracellular. And this part was the most tricky part, I think, to interpret. These diagrams look very different depending on where you get them. So it's just important that you recognize that they're not all going to look the same. So you're going to have to really look and really analyze sometimes. The nitric oxide comes with the GC. They're bonded. That's reception. This is the receptor. The first thing activated after that is the second messenger. Cool, cool. All right, now we are going to go on to the second assignment, which was talking about ginseng and Viagra. So first it said that ginseng enhances erection And it asked, so then what do you think it does to NO, or to nitric oxide? So first of all, this is the same pathway. This one's a little bit more complicated and it shows a lot more stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, where is the response? Okay, here's the response, relaxation, because this is the same process as before, just in a different illustration. So relaxation is the response. So maybe some people had a misunderstanding about this as well. The relaxation is actually what leads to the erection. So this is the normal pathway. Maybe you thought relaxation was erectile dysfunction, but when the smooth muscle cell relaxes, that allows blood to flow into that organ. So it's the relaxation of that muscle cell that allows the blood flow in, and that is the erection. So this is the normal process, actually. So if ginseng enhances this, so I know that I get more relaxation, I can make the assumption that the entire process leading up to it is enhanced as well in order to cause an amplified response. So I'm going to follow this backwards. So again, the nitric oxide was the ligand. So the nitric oxide bound to the GC. It converted GTP to cyclic GMP, which is my second messenger. That does two things. The one that causes the actual response goes this way. PKG is activated, comes down here. MLC PTase activates MLC, relaxation, boom. If I am increasing this, that means this whole process is amplified or enhanced. If NO is the ligand, I can assume that it increases the activity of NO. Because if I have more of the signal, I'll have more of the response. So I was working backwards here. I have more of a response, which means I should have more of a signal. So nitric oxide should be enhanced or increased or have a higher activation or have a higher activity. Viagra was a little bit more tricky, but still not that bad. It also enhances erection. So it also increases this. But this problem was asking specifically about PDE5. So PDE5 comes from the second messenger. So even though the PDE5 doesn't directly relate to the response, if the response is being enhanced, that means again that everything up to that point should have been enhanced. So I'm going to work backwards again. The NO bonding to the GC made the GTP to make the second messenger. This second messenger is causing more of a response, but it's also doing more of this at the same time. So the activity of the PDE5 also increases as a result of the Viagra. I can make that assumption because my second messenger is acting more in order to cause a higher response. I can safely assume that. And the second messenger does more than just that thing. It does both of these things at the same time. So as it's enhancing erection, it will also produce more PDE5. And then last but not least, if something is not, if neither of these chemicals are working, so if Viagra and ginseng didn't work, then that must mean something's faulty along here. It really could be anything. But we just said that the Viagra should increase the PDE5, which means that the cGMP should be fine. This should be fine because it should still be able to make more of this, so everything before this should be fine. So maybe PKG is broken. If PKG is broken, then this process can't happen. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. All right, so before I hang up on you, I wanted to let you know that I'm still so proud of you, and I still know how hard you're working. Just because you took the easy way out one time, some of you, doesn't mean that I don't think that doesn't mean that I think you're not working hard and that you're not trying. So still very proud of you. You're learning a lot. And so just keep it up. Remember why you're here and learn. Ask questions. I don't care if you get everything right if you don't actually know the answers. That's silly, right? Okay, so bye. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.